So Spider-Man Brand New Day is just around the corner, and oh my lord, the hype for this movie is insane. Everyone and their mom is excited for this movie, including myself. But hype is a hell of a drug that, when combined with a healthy dose of nostalgia, can have very strange side effects, like what we're seeing now, where people are going back and pretending to like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, why do I say they're pretending to like it? Well, what happens is someone will make a post showing this scene, and a bunch of people in the comments will always pop off saying some shit like, "This is one of the best opening scenes of all time." But if you've actually seen the movie, you'll know that this isn't the opening scene. This is. Yeah, we're talking about a real bad movie today. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and let me tell you why The Amazing Spider-Man 2 still sucks. So when the movie opens up, we are immediately shown the biggest problem with both of these movies: Peter's parents. Everything having to do with them just sucks so much. And this opening is no exception, because not only does it not tell us anything we wouldn't know from watching the first movie, it also manages to make everything we already knew stupider. Let's break it down. The very first thing we see is Mr. Parker scrubbing his hard drive, abandoning his child, and hopping on a plane to skip town. Goddamn. Now, we already know from the first movie that this is the last time Peter saw his parents, but this time we get to see what happened on the plane, and it might be the funniest scene I've seen in my life. So the scene opens with Peter's parents talking while his dad uploads a super mysterious file from his Sony TM laptop, but while it's uploading, his mom heads to the restroom, and as if on cue, this dude walks out the instant she's gone, and is like, "Hey, what's up? I'm totally not evil, don't mind the blood." Peter's dad obviously notices the blood all over his hands, but instead of attacking him while his back is turned, or at the very least try and stall him, he's just like, "Can I talk to the guy I know you just killed?" So this guy is just like, "Well, good a time as any," and pulls his gun out of the towel drawer. Why didn't he just keep it in his pocket instead of somewhere someone could easily find it? Who knows? But whatever, he has the gun. But instead of just sliming out Peter's dad immediately like he did the captain, he decides to dramatically put on a parachute and call Peter's dad a dumbass. Then the mom busts down the restroom door, and this dude lays her out immediately. So Captain Smackahoe and the dad start throwing hands, but right before the dad gets shot, the mom comes in and smacks this dude in the back of the head. And this man, mid-fall, turns around and trick shots her. Anyway, Peter's dad wins the fight, but instead of dealing with this guy, he just starts fumbling around with his wife. But then she's like, "Hey, you were doing something important." And he's like, "Duh." And he plugs his computer into an Ethernet cable. Why wasn't he plugged into one before? Why does he need one on an airplane? Good questions. But before you have time to think about it, the guy wakes up for round 2. Only this time, the captain, who is dead, decides he wants to lean forward and put the plane in a nosedive. And then Peter's dad is about to lose. So he shoots out the window of the airplane, which miraculously only sucks out just enough plane to smack the turbine, putting the plane in an even divier dive, and the dude, who is so unlucky that he hits the fucking wing on the way out. So then the dad finishes uploading the secret file, and the plane finally goes down. Oh yeah, this is a Spider-Man movie. The opening of this movie is so pointless and out of place that when you get to this scene, it feels like a whole other movie. And at first, it seems like a much better one. I mean, it doesn't last very long, but it seems like it. And that's because this short section where it's just Peter swinging around shows us the 3 good things this movie has. First off, this movie looks amazing. Even after 12 years, it still gaps most of the movies coming out today. And this is still the best Spider-Man suit we've ever gotten. But with the new movie suit, it is pretty close. The second thing this movie does well is the music, because holy smokes, Hans Zimmer mostly popped off with this soundtrack. And lastly, most of the actors here are doing a pretty good job, especially Andrew Garfield. He's a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man actor, and I can see why, even with that stupid ass accent. And that's about it. Everything else in this movie kinda sucks. So anyway, Peter catches wind of a dangerous car chase and rushes over to stop it. And this is where we get another problem with this movie, because instead of stopping the chase immediately, he does a little stand-up routine with the driver, which results in the death of like 20 people. And this is not a one-time thing. He repeatedly gets people killed because he was too busy joking around. You don't have to be a comic book expert to know that Spider-Man would never do that. Anyway, Peter saves Jamie Foxx from the flying taxi full of dead people he could have saved, and instead of locking in so no more innocent people die, he messes around and gives this guy a little pep talk before swinging off. And then he gets hit by a truck. But while he's wrapped around the hood, we get our first instance of his his PTSD, which takes the form of Gwen's dad, just mean mugging him. Now, I don't have a problem with the idea behind this, but the execution is just so funny. He's looking at him like old folks at Golden Corral look at mixed race couples. So anyway, Peter stops goofing around to get a triple S combo while Gwen's speech plays in the background, and for some reason, her speech reads like she knows she's gonna die. Anyway, Peter finally gets tired of Captain Stacy side-eyeing him, so he and Gwen have a fight, and she breaks up with him like a caveman.
I break up with you. I break up with you.
And this leads us to the next problem with this movie, this on and off will they won't they horseradish. They go back and forth arguing about England the whole movie, and then she just dies. So it ends up feeling like a giant waste of time in a movie that desperately needed more time. But anyway, now we get a little montage of Spider-Man saving people that's actually pretty good. Until we get to the part where we see Spider-Man stalking his ex like Bullseye. That's messed up, Spider-Man. Then we see the guy that Spider-Man saved, and turns out he accidentally created his very own K-pop stan. Alright, he's not that bad, but still. This dude is so obsessed, he's talking to himself pretending to be Spider-Man. The point being that if they wanted him to turn against Spider-Man, they needed a really convincing arc, and they did not have that. But we'll get back to that in a minute. For now, we get introduced to Harry the Hairline Osborn, and he's come to see his dad, who's dying of
the Osborn curse.
What is the Osborn curse? No clue, but we do know one thing about it though, which is the fact that it only killed his dad when he got older. This is very important because throughout this whole movie, Harry is acting like he has about 3 weeks left to live, but we know that he doesn't, so it makes a lot of what he does really ridiculous. So anyway, before he dies, Harry's dad gives him the knowledge cube, but two things here. One, he tells Harry that it has all the research he did to try and stay alive, which includes but is not limited to robotic octopus arms, robotic bird wings, and a giant rhinoceros suit. And two, he never actually tells Harry what this is or how to use it. The only reason Harry figured out how to use it is because he accidentally dropped it while poking at his rash, like a dumbass. So realistically, Harry could have gone his whole life having no idea what to do with the little doohickey, provided he just never put it on this specific table. Why? It could have just been a USB and no one would question it. But no, instead we had to do this 4D chess plan that could have easily went wrong for no reason. Speaking of plans that went wrong, let's talk about Harry. See, Harry wasn't really a thing in the first movie, to the point where Peter has no idea what Oscorp even is. So their genius plan to fit him into this movie was just to pretend like they were friends the whole time. Like they have a whole scene where they're trying to speedrun all the character work, but it just doesn't work. But anyway, let's see how Max is doing. Now I know everyone knows this scene is stupid, but after No Way Home, it's even more stupid. Because not only did the eels fix the gap in his teeth, but they also fixed his hair.
Nice.
Now, I know that this one isn't this movie's fault, but it's still pretty funny. But what is this movie's fault is the absolutely insane amount of sequel bait that's just shoved in here. Now, I know right now some of y'all are saying that it's the studio's fault, and you're absolutely right. Behind all of the bad this movie has, and there is a lot of it, you can see people clearly cared about what they were making. But as usual, the soulless husks at the studio butted in and ruined it. But here's the thing. While I do feel bad for the people who cared, this is the movie we got. I'm not going to pretend that the movie isn't garbage just because some people worked hard on it. And if anything, those people are probably laughing at the studio with us. And while we're on the topic of the good parts, I really like the scene where Electro wakes up in the morgue and we get to see the top layer of his skin crumple off his body. It's a really cool scene, but right after that, we get a really weird scene. So Peter and Gwen go on a date, but while they're on the date, Peter lets it slip that he's been stalking her from the rooftops every single day. And she is pretty okay with it, actually. But before we can have too much time to think about how weird that is, Electro just kind of wanders into Times Square and starts messing with the power lines. And this gets the attention of the police, who immediately pull up with 6 whole cop cars that just start going crazy until Spider-Man shows up. And it's at this point that the scene just stops making sense. So first of all, why do the people in this movie have the survival instincts of an ocean sunfish? Like, this dude is flipping cars and grabbing high voltage lines with his bare hands. And these people are just waiting around for something bad to happen. Second of all, remember when I said if they wanted to turn Electro against Spider-Man, they need a really convincing arc? Well, this movie doesn't do that. Instead, they decide to truly innovate by having no arc at all. Like, one minute him and Spider-Man are getting along, and the next he hates him. And I'm not exaggerating, it's just that fast. Electro gets shot, he shoots back, Peter saves a bystander, the TVs in Times Square show him instead of Electro, and that somehow makes him hate Spider-Man. It just doesn't make any sense. So Electro attacks Spider-Man, and we get this slow-mo sequence where Peter saves a bunch of people, and it would be pretty cool if I wasn't wondering why these goobers were on the stairs in the first place. So then we get this classic line.
It's my birthday. Now it's time for me to light my candles.
Followed by Peter getting knocked out of the fight, disappearing while Electro goes on a massacre, and spraying him with a hose. Peter, was the hat really necessary? People are getting annihilated, and you took the time to put on a silly hat. That's messed up, Spider-Man. So after that, Peter heads home, and instead of fixing any of his actual problems, he decides that he wants to figure out what happened to his parents. But he's kind of bad at it. He mostly just tapes a bunch of random stuff to his wall and makes dumb Google searches. Peter, where were you expecting? Also, the music in this scene is so random. Like, what does Gone, Gone, Gone by Philip Phillips have to do with the corporate espionage mystery subplot? Now, I'm not against all licensed music in movies. It can work, but only if the scene was written with that specific song in mind. This movie clearly just put in whatever song was popping at the time, and it just doesn't fit at all. So then Harry calls Peter and tells him to come over. He's like, hey man, I'm dying, and I think Spider-Man's blood might be the only cure. Now here's the thing, if this was any other version of Spider-Man, he would at least consider it. After all, with great power comes great responsibility, but not here. Here he's just like, I don't like needles though. And that's the only explanation he gives. Well, aside from the possibility of it having bad side effects. And if he was just some guy, then this might be reasonable. But he's Spider-Man. He knows the side effects. Why are you not at least trying to help your best friend that came out of nowhere? Also, Harry, why do you think Spider-Man's blood will save you? Yeah, he has a bit more self-healing than a normal person, but he's not Deadpool. Having his powers isn't going to save you from the Scarlet Rot. Also, Peter taking pictures for the Bugle comes out of nowhere. He sends in one picture through email, and him and Aunt May talk about it for 2 seconds. That's all the setup we get. Keep in mind that this is the plotline that leads to Gwen's death, which is the whole point of the movie. But whatever, now we get this pretty fun little sequence where Peter pretends to accidentally beat these guys up, but right after, we get this really weird scene where Electro is getting waterboarded by this goofy-ass scientist. And it's at this point you'll notice that Electro is now a completely different character. He goes from a mentally ill loner to evil Jamie Foxx so quickly that it feels like we missed half the movie. But we didn't, it's just that quick. So after that, we get this scene of Peter talking with Aunt May about his parents. But the funny thing about this scene is that Aunt May lays out exactly why Peter's parents don't matter perfectly, and subsequently why this subplot is so ass in both these movies. Because for all intents and purposes, Aunt May and Uncle Ben are his parents, so his real parents don't matter. But instead of doing what every other version of Spider-Man does and just not worry about it, they make up a dumb mystery that goes nowhere and just makes these movies worse. Speaking of making the movie worse, right after that we get this scene, which is just so dumb. So Spider-Man breaks into Harry's house to personally tell him that he's not gonna help him. Harry's obviously upset about this, and he makes a pretty good point. He's like, hey, I'm gonna die either way, so why not at least try? But Peter is still just like, nah, I'm not gonna do it, which leads into this classic line.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
So after that, Peter goes home to be upset that his friend is mad at him for giving him a death sentence, and he rips his shitty collage off the wall and beats the Sonic coins out of his calculator. Wait, what? Apparently, his dad had a secret lab, but why? He worked at Oscorp with Harry's dad. In the beginning of the movie, we see him destroying shit at Oscorp. Why did he have this overly complicated hidden subway lab? It doesn't make any sense. And what's even more stupid is what Peter finds out inside the lab, which is A, that his dad made the spiders, which is something we already knew, B, that Norman Osborn was planning to use the spiders to make biological weapons, which goes against everything we know about him trying to find a cure, and C, that Peter's dad used his DNA in the spiders so that they wouldn't work on anyone without it, which ruins the whole point. The whole idea behind Spider-Man is that anyone could have been bitten by that spider. And it's not just me saying that. Stan Lee said that. You know, the creator of Spider-Man. It's just such a dumb change that genuinely only makes these movies worse, which means that this whole subplot only makes these movies worse. But don't worry, even though that dumb subplot is over, the movie is not done being stupid. Now we cut back to Harry, who's pretty reasonably upset after Spider-Man told him to go kick dirt. But then his secretary tells him that she overheard the guards talking about a top secret lab where they keep all the evil experiments, including some of the venom from the spiders. So you'd think that a super secret lab would be pretty difficult to get any info on, and nope, he just looked it up on his computer. But it gets dumber, because on the file it says approved by Harry Osborn, and then a second later, he gets kicked out of his own company for covering up Electro. And it's supposed to be this big, they framed him moment. But the only proof they show us is the approved by Harry Osborn thing. There's no incriminating pictures, there's not even a signature. Anyone could have put that there, yet they're still throwing him out of his billion-dollar company with no investigation. And what's even funnier is when the lawyer comes in, he's talking in non-incriminating lawyer speech, but then he says this shit.
You are experimenting on people in there.
Progress has its stepping stones.
What do you mean by that?
So in order to get back into Oscorp, Harry decides he needs Electro's help, and his genius plan to break into the maximum security prison is to walk in the front door and attack the 2 fully armed guards. But that obviously doesn't... How did that work? So then Harry reaches Electro, and for some reason, Electro immediately threatens to kill him. I said it before, but Electro's character is a mess. Nothing he says or does makes any sense at all. No joke, I wrote a whole page trying to break down Electro's character, but I scrapped it, because trying to understand Electro's character in this movie made me feel like I was having a stroke. So I'm just gonna give you the cliff notes. He sucks. So anyway, Electro evaporates and puts himself back together like Dr. Manhattan, and Harry has this shit-eating grin that makes me really mad for some reason. So now that both of our badly written villains have teamed up, the first thing they do is drown a man. And honestly, I don't blame Electro for this one. That dude was a menace. So then they break into Oscorp, and Electro hits this man with the lightning blade technique and materializes out of thin air. And the lawyer is somehow not terrified by this. So then Electro kills him, brings him back to life, leaves through the electric socket on the floor, and closes the lid behind him. What is this movie? But now Harry makes the lawyer guy bring him to the secret lab so he can inject the spider venom. And I would like to point out that the spider's name is Arrhenius Oscorpius, which is so dumb. But whatever, Harry gets injected with the spider venom, and of course, it goes horribly wrong. So we get this horrifically edited sequence where he's spazzing on the ground, and this nasty shot paired with the most disgusting sound effect I've ever heard. So anyways, Peter finally makes up his mind and decides he wants to go to England with his girlfriend. But oh no, Electro's attacking, so Spider-Man has to go stop him. But instead of just getting it over with, the movie decides to add another subplot about these planes that are going to crash into each other. This movie is already overstuffed. What do you mean we have more shit to worry about? I cannot stress enough that this is the wrong way to make a movie. No amount of hype moments in future movies can make up for the fact that this movie feels like it was written by someone who doesn't know how to read. So Peter and Gwen go to fix up his web shooters using the power of science. But what's funny about the scene is at the end, when Gwen is insisting on going with Peter and he's like, nope. Because why is this scene from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 better written than the ending of Spider-Man 2, the game? It's baffling. Anyway, Peter and Electro go fight, and it means nothing because everything up to this point has been stupid and dumb. But don't worry, even if you were starting to get invested, somehow, we keep cutting back to these 2 random airplanes for no reason. Why can't this movie do anything right? So Peter and Electro fight, and it's fine. It's not a bad action scene, but action means nothing if everything else is bad. Just look at the Extraction series. Those movies have action scenes made by masters of their craft. But the movies are so awful that it doesn't matter. It's the same thing here, except this action is just above average. Also, while they're fighting, there's this part where Electro speed blitzes Spider-Man to the beat of Itsy Bitsy Spider, and it's so dumb, but I can't hate it. At this point, the movie has thrown so much bullshit at me that this doesn't even faze me. But now we cut back and oh no, Spider-Man's in trouble. So his girlfriend shows up and hits Electro with a car. And again, I would like to point out how Peter's reaction to his girlfriend being in incredible danger is better here in this movie than it is in the game, somehow. But anyway, they need to come up with a plan to beat Electro, and the plan they come up with is to kill him. Yes, you heard me right. Spider-Man came up with a plan to murder someone.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
In every other Spider-Man movie where the villain dies, it's their own fault, not because Spider-Man formulated a plan to blow them up. And you don't have to be a comic book expert to know that Spider-Man would never do that. Also, I hate how the movie expects us to care when these planes avoid running into each other, because not only is this whole scene stupid, but we also get to see inside the cockpit, and they could very clearly see each other coming. What did you think this blinding light was? Why is everyone in this movie so dumb? But whatever, Spider-Man successfully murders Electro and the day is saved. Except, uh-oh, Harry's back. And oh my god. Oh, great heavens! I get that he's supposed to be poisoned from the spider venom, but it looks like he went on a 6-month meth bender in the 12 minutes since we last saw him. Also, the suit looks really bad. Not only is it this weird techie Iron Man suit that looks nothing like a goblin, but it's not even finished. Half of the suit is just bare metal and exposed wires. It's so ugly. But putting that aside, Harry's motivation doesn't make sense. He got the spider venom. He got what he wanted. At this point, he'd probably be sorry. He'd think Peter knew this would happen. I mean, he didn't, because at that point, Peter didn't know the spiders could only work on him, so he was just being an asshole. But Harry shouldn't think so. But whatever, then Harry kidnaps Gwen and the fight ensues. And just like the Electro fight, the action is pretty good. I also really like the music in this scene, specifically this part right here. And the scene that comes after is also pretty good. Andrew Garfield somehow managed to brute force this scene to be effective, even though on paper it should be terrible. The whole movie up to this point has been butt booty butt cheeks, with some of the worst writing and editing I've seen in a big budget movie. Yet Andrew Garfield plays it so raw and unfiltered that you can't help but feel at least a little bad. But after that we get this little funeral scene to let what happened sink in, and this is where I feel the need to let you in on a little known fact. Somehow, some way, this movie could have been even worse. When I was getting footage for this video, I stumbled onto a deleted scene that revealed that Peter's dad survived the plane crash. I am flabbergasted that this even made it off of the drawing board and was filmed and edited before someone was like, you know, maybe this was a bad idea. I know it's not fair to hold it against the movie, but I can't help it. It's so dumb. So back to the movie, and right after the funeral scene, the movie decides it's time to set up more movies that are never gonna happen. And it just goes to show that executives should never be in charge of movies, because they really thought they were cooking in the studio, only for them to put out this diabolically bad movie that makes zero sense, has horrible editing, and ended up so bad that it killed the series, and it's embarrassing. So then Peter's sad and he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. But then he watches Gwen's depressing graduation speech and he's Spider-Man again. And again, it's just that quick. And the movie ends with New Yorkers still being stupid and the executives being even stupider. This movie is so bad. I started this video hoping that I was going to leave with a newfound appreciation for this movie like I did with Spider-Man Homecoming, but I couldn't have been more wrong. It fails at almost every single level a movie can fail at. And if it wasn't for a certain fan film, this would by far be the worst Spider-Man movie of all time. So for that, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Whew, that was a doozy. I know I'm a little late to the party, but at least I'm not going to have any direct competition.
Son of a...
Thank you all for 10,000 subscribers. The video on screen right now is part 1 of what I'm considering my 10K special, and this would be part 2. And, subscribe, please.